Gawkers, Art and Audience in Late 19th Century France, pulls gawkers out of the crowd and into the spotlight, telling the history of their emergence as a modern urban phenomenon through works of art.
In this book, Athens at the Margins, I recover a role for non-elite artists and patrons. Find out why a style that has been called crude, awkward, and just ugly merits a closer look. It can change the way that we think about ancient Greece.
All stories are stories about food. I explore art and literature from antiquity to the Renaissance to show how eating and drinking are always lurking at the very center of culture. Plus, I ask the question, what's for dinner at the Last Supper?
In Essential Colors, Architecture on Paper in Early Modern Europe is the first comprehensive account of how and why architects learned to communicate through color.
We're still surrounded by images of Roman emperors, but what do they all mean? And does it matter if you can't tell your Caligulas from your Neros? That's what my 12 Caesars is all about.
What are the uses of the past for the practicing architect? My book, Giuliano da Saugallo and the Ruins of Rome, explores how Giuliano's drawings prompted a reevaluation of the importance of monuments for the city and provided fuel for his own creative designs.
Conchophilia. Who does not love shells?
People loved them in early modern Europe, too.
Find out why in our book.
How has art been used to protest, process, mourn, and memorialize anti-Black violence in the United States? A Site of Struggle, American Art Against Anti-Black Violence explores this question by investigating works created in the 100-year period between the rise of anti-lynching activism in the post-Reconstruction era and the founding of Black Lives Matter.
This book argues that Italian art of the 1960s reimagined Italian and European history, but in oblique form. The reimagining is performed here along two nonlinear forms of temporality, the flashback and the eclipse.
What was the newest and most exciting printmaking technique in the late 18th century? Aquatine.
The art of cloth in Mughal India tells of the spinning of airy cottons, the weaving of velvety wools, and the ways that textiles transform the social, political, and aesthetic life of early modern South Asia.
Picture Ecology, Art and Eco-Criticism in Planetary Perspective is a great book by 16 smart people about art and eco-criticism in planetary perspective, from 11th century China to 21st century America. Check it out.
What do maintenance workers and libraries and trees and civic technologies have in common? They collectively represent the myriad ways of knowing they give shape to our cities. And I talk about them in A City's Not a Computer.
Doubled motifs, lines, things, reenactments and reversals, dilemmas, divided selves and pairs. These are the themes of the double.
What happens when the sites of site-specific art are fundamentally altered by climate, by urban sprawl, by colonial occupation? What do the new lives of these sites tell us about the artworks and the timescales of ecology? I take up these questions and more in Second Sight.
What a history of modernity and its art would look like if it was considered through three consecutive and interwoven inventions of the longue durée in the 19th century. The invention of the age of the earth, the invention of the age of human beings, and at last, the invention of the age of art.
Alloys uses a framework of synergy and function to explore the complex, rich relationship between modern sculpture and modernist architecture during the immediate post-war years in the United States.
Throughout Chinese history, dynastic time has been the dominant mode of telling the story of Chinese art. Yet there has been little examination of this concept in discourse and practice. My book, Chinese Art and Dynastic Time, uncovers how the development of Chinese art was described in its original cultural, social, political, and artistic context, and how these narratives were interwoven with contemporaneous artistic creation.